At 63 years old, after 31 years of marriage, I sat in my truck in the parking lot of a storage facility with everything I still legally owned packed into 11 boxes, and I remember thinking, with a strange and almost clinical calm, that I had no idea what came next. My name is Mason Parker. I want to tell you about the divorce that took the house, took a significant portion of the retirement I had spent 3 decades building, and took, for a period of time, most of my sense of who I was outside of being someone's husband. And I want to tell you what I built instead, because I think that second part matters considerably more than the first. Diane and I married in 1993. I was a mechanical engineer for a manufacturing company in Indiana. Steady work, decent pay, the kind of career that does not make headlines but reliably funds a comfortable life if you are patient with it. We built our house together in 1998, a modest 4-bedroom on 2 acres that we filled, over the following years, with 2 children, several dogs, and 30 years of the accumulated texture that makes a house into something considerably more than a structure. I am not going to spend this video litigating the details of what went wrong in our marriage, partly because some of it remains between the two of us, and partly because I do not think the specifics are actually the useful part of this story for you. What I will tell you is that the marriage had been genuinely difficult for the better part of the final 6 years, and that when Diane told me, on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday evening, that she wanted a divorce, I was surprised by the timing, but not, if I am honest with myself, surprised by the outcome. The divorce process took just under 14 months. And I want to be direct about the financial reality of it, because I think that part is genuinely useful for anyone watching who may be facing something similar. Indiana is what is called an equitable distribution state, which does not mean an automatic 50-50 split, but rather a division the court considers fair based on a range of factors, including each spouse's contributions, both financial and otherwise, over the course of the marriage. Diane's attorney argued, and the court largely agreed, that her contributions as the primary caregiver during our children's early years, along with her part-time work supporting my career advancement, entitled her to the house and a substantial portion of our joint retirement accounts. I do not say this bitterly. I have made my peace with the legal reasoning, even on the days it is harder to make peace with the outcome. What I walked away with, after legal fees that were considerably higher than either of us anticipated, was roughly 38% of what we had built together over 3 decades, a used truck and those 11 boxes. I was 63 years old, recently divorced, living for the first several months in a extended stay hotel because I could not bring myself to sign a full-year apartment lease while everything still felt so genuinely temporary. I want to describe that period honestly, because I think stories like this one often rush past the difficult middle section to get to the inspiring ending, and I do not want to do that to you. I ate alone most nights, standing at the small kitchenette counter in that hotel room, because sitting down at a table built for one felt like an admission I was not ready to make. I stopped attending the weekly poker game I had played in with the same 5 men for nearly 15 years, not because anyone excluded me, but because Diane had by that point become close with 2 of their wives, and the social geometry of the group had shifted in a way that made my continued presence feel complicated for everyone, myself included. My son, then 26, remained close with both of us, and tried admirably to stay neutral, which I recognized, even at the time, was placing a genuinely unfair burden on him that he had not signed up for. The turning point, if I can call it that, arrived roughly 5 months after the divorce finalized, during a conversation with my daughter Rachel that I did not see coming and was not prepared for. She flew in for a weekend, ostensibly to help me look at apartments, and over dinner on the second night, she asked me a question that stopped me mid-sentence. She asked what I actually wanted, not what I thought I should want given the circumstances, not what would be practical or reasonable or expected of a 63-year-old man rebuilding from a divorce, but what I actually, specifically wanted, if the answer were allowed to be anything at all. I did not have an immediate answer, which itself told me something, because I realized I had not genuinely asked myself that question in longer than I could accurately remember. Somewhere in the second bottle of wine that evening, an old, half-forgotten thought resurfaced, one I had mentioned to Diane years earlier during a vacation, and which had been gently but firmly set aside as impractical at the time. I had always wanted to live somewhere warm, somewhere near water, somewhere that did not require me to spend 4 months of every year navigating ice on my driveway. Before I tell you what I actually built, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we cover the financial realities that matter most to American seniors navigating major life transitions, including divorce after 60. And next week, I am covering the specific retirement account and Social Security implications every person needs to understand before finalizing a divorce settlement later in life. Subscribe now, because the financial mistakes I made during my own divorce were entirely avoidable, and I do not want you making the same ones. I chose the Philippines after nearly 4 months of research, comparing cost of living data against what remained of my settlement and my projected Social Security benefit, which I would not be eligible to claim for another 2 years at that point. I settled on a coastal town in the Visayas region, and I want to walk you through, plainly, what I actually built there, because I think the specifics matter more than the general sentiment. I purchased outright a small 2-bedroom house on a modest plot of land for considerably less than what my truck alone had been worth back in Indiana. I spent the first 8 months largely alone, which I want to be honest was genuinely difficult, particularly in the evenings, when the quiet of an unfamiliar house tends to amplify whatever you have not yet fully processed. But somewhere around month 9, I did something that changed the entire trajectory of what followed. I started, tentatively at first, offering informal mechanical and engineering advice to a small group of local fishermen whose boat engines required more sophisticated troubleshooting than the local repair options could reliably provide. This began as a favor for a neighbor and, over the following year, became something considerably larger. I now spend 3 mornings a week at what has become an informal repair operation I run largely as a volunteer service, having formally partnered with a young Filipino mechanic named Bobby, whom I am, in practical terms, mentoring in diesel engine repair, a skill set that has meaningfully increased his own earning potential in a fishing community where reliable engine repair is both scarce and genuinely valuable. I want to be specific about what this actually looks like, because I think the specificity is what makes it real rather than simply inspirational. I am not running a formal business. I do not draw an income from this work, both because it is not necessary given my Social Security and remaining settlement funds, and because charging local fishermen market rate for repairs would defeat much of the purpose I have found in doing it. What I have built, in practical terms, is a small workshop attached to my house, filled with tools I shipped over gradually from Indiana, where I spend genuinely satisfying hours most weeks solving mechanical problems for people who are sincerely grateful for the help and who have, in the process, become something considerably more than acquaintances to me. Bobby now joins me for dinner most Thursday. His mother, a formidable woman named Rosalinda, who runs the largest fish stall in the local market, has taken it upon herself to ensure I am, in her words, eating like a person and not like a sad American bachelor, and delivers considerably more fish to my doorstep each week than any single person could reasonably consume. I called Diane about 7 months ago, the first real conversation we had attempted since the divorce finalized beyond strictly logistical matters involving our son's upcoming wedding. I did not call to relitigate anything or to seek any kind of reconciliation, because I do not believe that is where either of us is or should be. I called, somewhat to my own surprise, because I wanted to tell her about the workshop, about Bobby, about the specific and unexpected shape my life had taken, and I found, once I started talking, that I genuinely wanted her to know I was, in fact, doing well, not as a point of pride or vindication, but because 31 years is a long time to share a life with someone, and some residual portion of me still wanted good things for her the way I wanted them for myself. The conversation was brief, cordial, and considerably less fraught than I had anticipated. She told me, near the end of it, that she was glad, and I believed her. I do not want to suggest that everything about this period has been some triumphant transformation, because that would not be honest, and I have tried to be honest with you throughout this entire story. There are still evenings, particularly around our old anniversary date, when the loss of 31 years is genuinely present in a way that no workshop full of satisfied fishermen fully resolves. I do not think it is supposed to fully resolve. What I can tell you, roughly 2 years into this rebuilt life, is that the man sitting in that truck outside the storage facility, with 11 boxes and no idea what came next, could not have imagined the specific shape his life would eventually take, and I am genuinely glad he could not, because I think the not knowing was, in its own strange way, necessary for what eventually got built. If you are watching this, and you are somewhere in the middle of your own version of that storage facility parking lot, 63 or otherwise, uncertain what comes next after something significant has been taken from you, I am not going to tell you the answer is a workshop in the Philippines, because it may well not be. But I will tell you what Rachel's question taught me, because I think it applies regardless of your specific circumstances. What do you actually want? Not what seems practical, not what is expected of someone your age and your situation, but what do you actually, specifically want, if the answer is allowed to be anything at all? It took me 5 months and a bottle of wine with my daughter to ask myself that question honestly. I would encourage you not to wait that long. Subscribe to Mason Parker USA and turn on the notification bell. Share this with someone you know who is rebuilding after a loss and has not yet asked themselves what they actually want, rather than what they think they are supposed to want. I will see you in the next one.